agenda adjustments?
I have none this evening.
Oh, is it not on? Says it's on. You still can't hear me? Got to hold it closer? All right. So I'm sorry for that. Okay, no agenda adjustments for the night. Item 2.1, entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the September 8th, 2021 Board of Directors meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions, comments, changes? Seeing none, then all those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. At this point in time, this is according to board policies, we have our public comment period. I remind everybody that this is an opportunity to talk about items that are particularly on the agenda. We do allow other things that have to do with the school functioning to be mentioned, but it's more or less for items on the agenda. But that being said, because there are a number of people here, we have a number of people out on Zoom that may want to speak as well. We're going to, and so that we can carry out our business that we're tasked to do here tonight, I will need to limit the public discussion period. The last meeting we gave 30 minutes. We have a few more people here tonight, so I'd like to allow up to 45 minutes. I'd still like comments maintained at 2 minutes per person. Please do not duplicate over and over the same comments been made. We will hear it each time. It's not a time for public discussion back and forth with the board. It is a time for the public to make their comments. And so with that being said, as each of you approach the mic or on Zoom, talk to us, please identify yourself with your name and the town that you're a resident of. And then you'll have your 2 minutes to express your thoughts. So the mic's open for anybody who would like to speak. Please keep your mask on. We'll be able to hear you, believe me.
That's why I'm here, though, is because of the masks. You're forcing the government.
Please
alone-
put on your mask.
The
Thank you.
government alone, okay, I'm a resident of Sabatis, is trying to force something upon us that not everybody agrees on, and not everybody disagrees on it. But now we're forcing masks upon our children when technically you're supposed to be vaccinated, so what's the point? We're still having massive outbreaks. We're still having all kinds of other issues that are going on. So why are we putting this demand on our poor children? Can't they just be kids? Haven't they been through enough for the past year and a half?
It's your comments. It's not
I'm
a
just
question
saying,
and answer.
Yeah, well, if I want to complain about stuff, then I need to obviously come and complain about it. You know, our kids shouldn't be forced into any of this because of something else. Because most parents that I've spoken to and I know, we're at a point we're ready to withdraw our children completely. And we shouldn't be having that. This is an amazing school system that we're in, one of the best in the state. And it's just, I don't know. I think it's wrong.
All right. Thank you.
Hi, Laura from Sabatis. So I'll try to get my 2 minutes in, but I stand here tonight, I'm shocked that we have so many healthcare professionals on this board. I wasn't aware that we had so many medical doctors that were able to give medical advice to the public. Last I knew, our parents had a choice where to get our medical care for our children, like their physician, hospital, places like that. You're not public health officials, you're not doctors, you're educators. Your job is, as you sit there, is to provide children in the Sabatis, Wales, and Litchfield community with an education. We get it. We see the news, we see the articles, we see the posts. We understand that the CDC has guidelines and the school is mandating some of those guidelines and not just using them as recommendations. Asking our kids to sit in a mask for 6 hours a day with minimal breaks is unacceptable. And your planning, your discussions, and you can't come up with any other better ideas just baffles me. You're not able to come up with real plans, then what are you doing on this board? There are a few other people that would take your seat gladly. I know in the past it's nobody gets along, nobody gets involved. I've seen it myself. I even offered to coordinate meetings with Andy last year. And I think both of us thought, Andy, that it would get easier this year, and it hasn't. I think it's gotten worse or more complicated. I wanted to share with you guys some things I learned this week about COVID, as my son was remote. My daughter was not. So it only affects some of the 5th and 6th grade classrooms, but not their homeroom, their lunch, gym, or other classes, just science, math, and humanities. I learned that some of the staff have not quite yet got savvy with their cameras and remote learning. It affects cold lunch but not hot, or maybe it's hot lunch and not cold. I can't remember, but it most certainly is not on the bus. Some 7th and 8th grades are close contacts at football, but not at school.
That's 2 minutes, so if you can wrap it up, please.
Sure. Was that 2 minutes? Somebody else talking to me? So I also didn't know that COVID was a factor in not having a 6th grade curriculum, social studies. I thought we had a director of curriculum, but maybe I'm confused that that's not really where that goes. One thing I did want to point out was the resource officer. There was a public meeting last night with the Sabatis Police Department. Mrs. Waterman did speak at that, and of how the district doesn't have an SRO currently, and it's a critical need.
Your time has expired, please.
And I wanted to thank you, Jen. I wanted to thank Jen for making the Sabatis community aware that that's a critical need for our school. The sheriff's office said that nobody had reached out to him yet, but I don't know how Androscoggin would work, but Sabatis is going to try to get some additional officers with that funding. So I assume that the discussion also will happen because we do have to increase that wages, that the Sabatis residents wouldn't be penalized for the 75% cost of that resource officer.
Ma'am, you're way over.
So lastly, I'll wrap it up for you, Mr. English. I think I also have my husband's 2 minutes and my 2 kids' 2 minutes, but I'll wrap it up for you. So I did review the CPT meeting from the last Friday. I just encourage you to review the participation on that because it is principals, teachers. I think there was a nurse on there. I'm not really sure. Two community members. I encourage you to understand we're asking for consistency. We're asking for choice. We're asking for collaboration. A few times I've heard from members of this board that sit in front of me, not all of you, but some of you, that you don't care who likes you. You don't care if people agree with you. You don't care, you don't care, you don't care. Is it really appropriate way to approach these difficult discussions? We come to this meeting because we care. You sit here because you care. Saying you don't care, you should walk out that door and go not care at your house because we care. And I know that you care. Why can we not come together? We want our kids to be in this district and we want them to be proud.
Follow the guidelines. How do we expect our students to do it?
Football jerseys to school. We want them to grow up with their friends that they've had for years. We are your neighbors. We are your business owners. We are your friends and your families. The RSU slogan is inspiring all learners to achieve future success. Are you doing that by shutting down people that come and express their ideas, their concerns, their approach? I promise you that these community members, neighbors, and friends are to be heard. We are here to be taken seriously, and you work for us, our kids, our community. You are elected in that seat by us, and next time, I encourage members of our community to review your voting rights and take into consideration on the next polls. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. We're gonna, hold on one second.
Okay, sure.
No, do we have anybody on Zoom that spoke up? We try and
no
rotate if we
problem.
can. Okay, nobody on
Okay.
Zoom, so go right
All
ahead,
right.
please. Your name and town?
Yep, my name is Julianne Colby and I reside in Sabatis. I have 2 children in the district. 2.5 weeks was all it took for one of them to be a close contact. Myself and my husband both attended RSU4 schools, and I've always loved the safety and sense of community in a small, rural school district. But lately, I feel as if both of those qualities are severely lacking. I've seen school board meetings from other states on the news with parents ranting about conspiracy theories and screaming at their elected board members. I think to myself, I'm glad my kids are in a school district where people would never behave like that, but I'm sad to think I may be wrong. Grown adults coming to meetings and behaving in ways their kids would be reprimanded for if they ever acted in such a way at school. refusing to do the simplest task of having their kids wear a mask to protect their friends and community until all children are eligible for the option of vaccination. The FDA is expected to issue an emergency use authorization for vaccinations for children very soon, and it's my opinion we should require masking for schools where children are currently too young to be vaccinated until that option's available for families who choose it. When my 7-year-old found out he was a close contact, the first thing he told me was he hoped he wouldn't get anyone sick. We should all try to have a little more empathy for each other and set an example. Our kids are watching. These meetings are uploaded onto YouTube, where they will forever be available for viewing on the internet. What you say and do matters. So I want it known that I fully support pooled testing and universal masking for at least the middle and elementary schools for now, until parents have had the chance to get their kids vaccinated, if they choose to do so. I also want it to be known that our community should be better than this. Thank you.
Thank you. Still nobody on Zoom? All right, yes, sir.
My name is Rocky. I'm a resident of Sabatis, and I have a whole binder that contains studies regarding the effectiveness and harm of masks, as well as the transmissibility and impacts of COVID-19 pertaining to children. The CDC guidelines referred to by the MEDOE states that at least 10 studies have confirmed the benefit of universal masking. Yet the studies cited are not quite that definitive. Statements such as mask mandates appear to have contributed to the mitigation of COVID-19 and requiring the use of face masks could help reduce are the statements from these cited studies. These results are probable, not confirmed. Clinical studies are experiments that are intended to add in medical knowledge. They do not confirm anything. Not only is the CDC guidance inherently misleading, it is also guidance. There is no statutory requirement affording the CDC, DHHS, or even the DOE authority to require adherence to their guidance. If there is such a statutory requirement, I request it to be provided by the board to the citizens of RSU4. The same CDC guidance also states evidence for studies suggested that staff-to-staff transmission is more common than transmission from students to staff, staff to student, or student to student. School interventions should include prevention strategies to reduce the transmission potential of staff members. The evidence to date suggests that staff to student and student to student transmission are not the primary means of exposure to SARS-CoV-2 among infected children. Several studies have also concluded that students are not the primary source of exposure to SARS-CoV-2 among adults in school setting. If the CDC can pick and choose certain statements or portions of other studies to suit their need, then we can choose whether or not our children use a medical device.
That's 2 minutes, sir.
All right,
I don't think that's really the way it works, but
I'm sorry. She volunteered her time to me, so therefore I can use her time. I am gonna finish my statement.
I figure you're gonna finish your
I
statement.
will
I'm
not
just
be
telling you
silenced
that
like you were
your 2
trying to
minutes
do
is
with
up.
my mask. From the FDA's letter dated 4/24/2020, a face mask including cloth coverings is a device that covers users' nose and mouth and may or may not meet fluid barrier or filtration efficiency levels. The FDA EUA for face mask is for a source of control only. The source control refers to the use of face masks to contain the individual's respiratory secretions to help prevent transmission from infected individuals who may or may not have symptoms of COVID-19. They are not PPE, meaning that they are not substitute for filtering face pieces, respirators, or for surgical masks. Face mask authorities under the EUA must meet requirements that does not claim to be intended for use as surgical masks to provide liquid barrier protection. This does not state or imply that the product is intended for antimicrobial or antivirus protection or related uses, or is for such as infection prevention or reduction, and it should not be used for particulate filtration. Requiring universal masking to attend school is requiring children to use medical devices. So yeah, basically you guys asking us to do universal masking, there's no point in it. And as we grow up, we are told from our school systems to do our research and always push forward to learn more. It's like you guys are all stuck in a stagnant area and you just want to listen to whatever they're feeding you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anybody on Zoom yet?
Hello, my name is Eric Daniels and I'm from Wales. My wife and I graduated from Oak Hill in 2006. After moving around for our own higher education, we decided to move back to the RSU4 district. We did this because of the education we received and because of the community support that exists here. We started following the school board closely earlier this year when the rumblings of a building restructuring began. We were unsure of what we thought, but ultimately, after hearing from the source of the changes, we understood. We understand why they're being made and we agree with them. We've continued to follow the meetings and been satisfied with how the board has handled many of the difficult decisions that have arisen recently. Last year, my wife and I decided to redshirt, as a lot of the pre-K students were identified, our son and not send him to pre-K because of the uncertainty around COVID. This year, he's in kindergarten and loves it. He wears a mask because my wife and I decided after the last school board meeting that he should wear a mask. Because if he wears a mask, then he doesn't have to be quarantined if he's considered a close contact. I share this because at the end of the day, the majority of children don't care if they wear a mask or not. It is the parental influence and behavior that determines a child's outlook and perspective. Wearing a mask may cause distractions during the day, but it doesn't affect the child's ability to participate in a classroom, and we see that time and time again. Masks have been worn in operating rooms across the world for as long as anyone can remember. If masks were unsafe to wear in the OR, then I assure you a lawyer somewhere would have taken that case without a doubt. With the current information being presented to us as a community for our children to be in school, I fully support the universal masking of children in our schools, as much as I dislike wearing a mask just like the next person. Last weekend, I watched the CPD meeting from Friday, and there was discussion regarding pool testing. Although the pool testing option sounds great, and I do think it would be a great opportunity for our school to do it, I don't know that we have the resources after listening to that community conversation in that meeting. I don't think the teachers, the nurses, and although we can bring outside staff in to help us with it. Thank you. At the end, as the last comment, I'd like to thank everyone involved, those that are for masks, those that aren't for masks, and everybody for sharing their comments and their concerns. Thank you.
All right, nobody on Zoom still? Well, the people there, nobody has raised their hand. Nobody sent a chat? All right, are there any others who wish to make the public comment? Yep. No, okay.
Hello, my name is Mia Cody, and I'm a resident of Wales. My daughter's in kindergarten, and I think I just wanted to echo the sentiment. We are in support of universal masking. All she wants to do is be in school. She loves school. She just wants to go to school. She doesn't care about the mask. And just wanted that to be heard. If this is what it takes to get her to stay in school, to protect her. I have a 2-year-old daughter. She's at daycare. She's with kids from all of the schools, and this protects her too. But right now, my kids can't get vaccinated. If I had the choice, I would. When I have the choice, I will. And for now, I am just at least in support of masking for the kids who don't have the option for vaccination. And that's all.
Thank you. Any others? Oh, we do have someone on Zoom? Okay, yeah.
So I wanted to say that I got 2 daughters going to 2 different school buildings right now, and they both love school. We've had a lot of great experience with teachers. We're still pretty young right now. These experiences we can't have in homeschool. However, I am pro-choice. my girls are still going to school wearing a mask. Now, I believe that wearing a mask isn't the most healthiest thing, and I didn't want my girls to have to do it again. We went last year 2 days a week wearing masks, and at the end of 2 days, my youngest came home every day with a rash on her face. And I don't want to do that again this year, and I didn't plan on doing it. I thought once we were in red, we'd be remote learning, which allows me not to put my kids in masks. With the way the plan was set up, it was going to be pretty quick that we were in red, so I figured we'd be remote learning and not in masks. As of right now, most kids don't wear masks properly. They have gaps under their nose, gaps on the sides, they're always pulling it, touching their face. I see adults this way too. I don't blame them, but it won't work if everyone says it will to do this, which is what we do. The masks are breathing ground for harmful viruses, germs, E. coli, strep, mold, and other fungi. If you have a child that's got a runny nose or a cough, and they're coughing in that mask all day, they're not breathing the fresh air they need to get better. Last year, our youngest went to pre-K, and there was a little girl from her daycare. They were friends for about 2 years at daycare. It took them half the year to figure out who each person was because of the masks they wear.
That's 2 minutes, sir.
From what we usually see in body language, facial expression, how a teacher announces words. There's a lot that happens when that mask is covering up your face. I don't want my kids to be living in fear because everyone thinks you're safe with the mask. I don't know if that's necessarily true or not. And on the box itself, it says that they don't prevent any infectious diseases. I think it's important that we all get the choice, whether the choice is to wear masks or whether it's to remote from school. All I know is my only option should be to put my girls in masks all day. They love school, like I said. I want them to be able to go, but I'm not comfortable with them wearing masks all day. As far as mandates go, we flip-flop on the mandates. Sometimes masks help, sometimes they don't.
All right, sir, you're 3 minutes.
The more and more science we go, the more we learn. I heard Pluto's not a planet anymore. Well, I went to school for years in Pluto. I'm not sure where that sits today. All I know is the parents need to have their rights and have the choices to make for their kids and what they feel is best.
All right, thank you, sir.
They should get to the parents and not the school board or the community. They should be individuals. And we need options. I thought the board needed our informed consent to require a child to wear a medical mask all day. Does the board need to provide advantages and risks of said medical mask?
Sir, you're at,
There needs to be a
I don't know if he can even hear me.
perhaps remote learning is that option.
He
But
can't.
that doesn't exist right now for some reason. I believe the National Institute of Health has 46 studies that masks don't prevent the spread of viruses, just like it does on the box. They do have 26 studies that show mask wearing could be harmful. And as far as breathing difficulties go, why would we have our kids suffering through breathing with this mask on for 7 hours a day? I just want to say that I'm pro-choice. I think there should be options for all of us, whether it's to wear a mask or not, or whether it's to learn remote or not. I feel that parents should be able to make their own decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Sarah Chisholm, who would like to speak.
Okay.
Sarah, if you'd like to speak, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear very well. My name is Sarah Chisholm, and I live in Litchfield. I have 2 students in the district at 2 different schools. One has already been considered a close contact this year, and I think the one thing that I hope we can all agree on is that we want our kids in school. We'd rather have them in school than at home doing remote or at home being quarantined. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the DOE has said that if districts or schools implement universal masking, then our students don't have to quarantine if they're close contacts. So for me, I support having a masking mandate, a universal masking in our district because I want my children to be able to keep attending school. And I also want to point out that when our kids are considered close contact and they need to be at home, it's very difficult on do if we want our kids to be in school. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Oh, young lady.
Good evening. My name is Brandy Rand, and I'm a resident of Wales, and I have 6 children here in the district. I'm also part of the CPT team, which I'm actually ashamed of right now. Some of my concerns are, you guys, everybody's here tonight, and we're concerned about COVID, right? But some of our administrators right here were fully aware of a team, a football team that was exposed and made aware of by those in charge, and they decided to allow those players to still go to school. If our main concern is keeping kids safe, then something should have been done. Second concern, everybody here is concerned with COVID. I'm concerned that my 1st and 2nd graders get picked up, and there's no asking of who's picking them up. We do foster care. Some of these children don't come from good homes, and there's a possibility of somebody picking them up that's not supposed to. And I was told administration had too much on their plate to be checking. That's a huge concern. Been in school 3 weeks, my middle schooler, called twice now to pick up my son who was not at school. Was told we don't have a way to do attendance. All we know is that the work is getting done, whether that's remote or in person. I'm more concerned of a fire or a mass shooting and nobody knowing where my child is. I think those are the things that are getting missed that are quite important, and I addressed them in the CPT meeting. I emailed the CPT meeting, and for somebody who's constantly telling people that they need to stop talking, majority of those CPT meetings are not very productive because you, Mr. English, are way off task. So here tonight, I think it's about time we start listening to the concerned parents, the concerned teachers that you think don't matter. They matter to me. And I grew up here, I graduated here, and so did my husband. And it's time that those things start taking priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others?
I have Tracy Rankford online.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, my name is Tracy Rancourt. I'm a resident of Sabattis, and my granddaughter goes to Sabattis Primary. She's in 1st grade. She just started this year. And because of a COVID incident at the school, she went to school 8 days and then was off a whole week because there was somebody, an adult with COVID in the class that there was no masking. I understand people's willing to want to make a choice, and I get that. I know this is America. We do have that ability to choose. But to the gentleman who said about the health choices of his own kids, well, what about my children? My daughter has a 5-month-old baby at home. So if my granddaughter gets COVID at school because somebody isn't wearing a mask and brings that home to the 5-month-old baby, that's detrimental. I think this is so much about the parents. I think if you ask the kids, and I've asked my granddaughter if she minds wearing a mask during the day, she could care less. She just wants to be in school. And I think the parents, we're making such a big deal out of this, where kids really don't care. They just want to be in school. So I thank you for your time, and that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Katie Gillette online.
Okay.
Katie, if you'd like to speak.
Hi, yeah, my name is Katie Willett, and I live in Wales with my husband and daughter. I just want to say that I don't
More volume.
mandating masks is the right option. I think we should be able to make our own decisions. If you want to wear a mask, you wear a mask. If you don't. We live in America, and we have that freedom. I don't think there's any authorization for the RSU to put our children in a mask. That's a medical device, and nobody's authorized you guys to be able to do that. I just want to let you know that
Thank you. Are there any others? Yeah, we have a person who spoke before wants to speak again. I don't think that is in keeping with what's going on, because I haven't tracked how many seconds she may or may not have had left. So, well, we're here to listen, but then I would have to allow everybody to speak again and again. So, at this point, I am going to deny Mrs. Rancourt the opportunity to speak again, in keeping with fairness of all speakers. So, is there anybody else?
My name's Veronica Dumay. I'm from Litchfield. I am a teacher at Reedfield, and I have been there for 23 years. And I'm telling you, masks, I don't like masks, but I would rather have my kids in my classroom with masks on so I can teach them, because when they are remote, last year I had kids that weren't paying attention. They come back, they're lower than what they left. So whether we have to wear masks or not, I don't care, because I just want my kids to come to school, because these are the kids that are going to be taking care of us when we're older. And I don't want them at pre-K level in first grade. So whether it's masks or no masks, I don't think that's the big deal. What I think is the big deal is that we need to abide by whatever the protocol is, no matter who it is. If it's 10 days, then everybody needs to do it. But whatever the state has in place, that's what we need to follow. Whether it's masks or not, it doesn't matter. I just feel that the kids need to be at school, and if you don't want your kids to wear masks, my feeling is homeschool them then, or find somewhere else. But
Thank you. Any others? Seeing none, then I will close this public comments period, and we'll move on to petitions and communications.
I have none this evening.
And we'll go to 5.1, Superintendent's Report.
I've got a pretty, I've got a pretty quick report tonight. Obviously, things are very busy right now. I look at our administrators' faces, and they're pretty tired. There's been a lot going on. They're managing a lot. And so, you know, looking at everything there is to do with school and COVID and everything else, my hat goes off to them, because they are doing heroic things, just as our teachers are. Secondly, I want to let all of you know that this week we've hired a few bus drivers. We're actually up to 3 this week, and we've got another one in the pipeline, I believe. Correct, Glenn? Yeah, so that is good news. I want to thank Larry and Glenn and their staff for all they've done to get our runs back up and running and more efficient than they were before. Obviously, you know, I've been out and about to schools. It's nice to see our schools full. It's nice to have kids in school. It's nice to see them doing the things they did before. Lastly, I want to make you all aware that we're dealing with something specifically at the middle school and high school with a thing called devious leaks. I'm sure you've probably seen it on the news, and it's a pretty frustrating thing. We've got students destroying bathroom equipment left and right. I know that Ben and Jenny and Marco and Sam are chasing this down like crazy. I would ask, you know, parents, please talk to your kids about this. You know, I had a conversation at my dinner table the other night. My 12-year-old stepson thought it was hilarious. I promptly reminded him that it was not. And so, you know, TikTok's an interesting place. If you've never been there, I personally have no use for it, but you should probably check it out, because there are things that kids are learning on there that you may not want them to learn. So, other than that, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, I do have 3 appointments: Leo Labby, bus driver; Justin Vogel, a custodian at Libby Tozier; and Lucas Worrell, golf coach at the high school. No resignations or retirements.
Okay. Questions? All right, thank you. Financial report was in the packet, and we'll have when the committee reports will be discussed further. Principals reports. Who's leading us off tonight? Mr. Alberti.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for a couple of moments to share some things that are happening at Oak Hill High School. First up, the freshman team hosted a debate on the topic of the Clean Energy Connect corridor. Freshman students learned about the corridor across content areas, which culminated in the debate between Mr. Ben Dudley from Mainers for Clean Energy Jobs and Mr. Kent Ackley, who's a former state representative. I would like to thank Mr. Ed Zewis, our science teacher here at Oak Hill High School, for initiating this learning opportunity for our students. Second up, we have recently certified our graduation report with the DOE, and I'm proud to announce our 4-year graduation rate has increased from school year 1920 at 83.65% to school year 2021 at 89.47%. Our graduation rate has consistently increased in the time I've been with the high school, and I would like to thank all of the staff at Oak Hill for their efforts and continued support from central office, the board, and school community. Last but not least, it is homecoming week at Oak Hill High School. We've had a number of dress-up days, including Music Monday, Tribute Tuesday, a Wacky Wednesday, Throwback Thursday, and Fun Friday. Spirit boards are being developed, which are themed paintings to be judged at the end of the week. We have a prep rally on Friday, hopefully outdoors on the football field. We'll see how the weather holds out on that one. And a dance outdoor under 2 majestic tents. Should be lots of fun. And just, because you guys are wondering about this, scores, right? Who's in the lead for the classes? Here we go. In first place, we have the seniors. Second place, juniors. And then tied for third place are sophomores and freshmen. Let's see here, get lost in my papers. And I would also like to take a moment and acknowledge that not all of our student body is able to participate in homecoming this week due to being close contacts, and I do want them to all know we miss them and are thinking of them this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Hey guys, so at the middle school we have had some growing pains. We're the first to go through the color coding system, which is very interesting and exciting. But even with kids being out with quarantine, we still have had a 96% attendance rate at the middle school, which is pretty exciting. We are keeping kids safe, and we're trying to keep them in school at the same time. We've unloaded and loaded over 400 cars while the busing was out. And even with that, we had over 98% attendance rate at the middle school, which is pretty exciting. I can't thank the community enough. I'm so proud of living here, very proud of our community getting together and pulling together and getting our kids to school. That was very, very exciting for all of us. Our 7th and 8th grade humanities teachers have pulled together a commemorative 9/11 unit where kids have studied the causation of the war in Iraq, as well as the history, and put together a cumulative project of having a car wash where a lot of our local communities sent vehicles over. A lot of veterans had their vehicles washed. We had the SWAT vehicle from Lisbon come over, which is pretty exciting. But we gave back to our community through a 9/11 commemorative unit, which is pretty exciting for us. At the primary school, we've gone through our community meetings, and we've created our vision statement for the year, working with the 1st and 2nd graders and unpacking what it means to be a student at Sebastian Primary School. Our vision this year is a place where students are kind, safe, and are happy to learn together. And we're very excited about that. It's been a lot of fun unpacking how to be socially, emotionally together as a school. And again, the focus is being students first. Again, with attendance, with busing, we had over 80% of the kids in the school, which is pretty exciting. Thanks again to the community for dropping the kids off, which was really great. One statement, I need some help with something. We have a thing called the FRAMs, the free reduced lunch forms, and I don't think everyone understands how important those are. They help us buy better food for our kid. The more those documents we get back signed, the more money we get from the state to help us with our food program. Likewise, it also helps us with the Title I funding. It allows us to have assistance for reading and for math for our kids, the most neediest. And without those forms coming back, we're going to lose that funding. And right now, we're shy about 75 forms, which is a little less than half of the student population of the primary school. So I've sent some more letters home. But if we can just help us out by getting those forms signed and passed in, that'd be great. But, overall, things are going fairly well. We've had some glitches, but we're setting up systems to take care of that. And, if anyone has anything to say, you can come give me a call. We're here for everybody. So,
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Libby Tozier last week had picture day. That was fun. It's adorable to see the little pre-K and kindergartners come in all dressed up. Fun to see them sit there and smile through that. We've had 2 community meetings at Libby Tozier so far this year. We created a school vision. The team leaders run that process. It's amazing to see all of those kids sitting together and participating in a fun way. Lots of laughs and smiles. We're just getting closer to wrapping up our local assessment window next week at Libby Tozier, so there's been lots of assessing. We'll have great data to use to inform our instruction as we move forward. At Carrie Ricker, Picture Day is October 4th, so that's right around the corner. Our first assembly will be next week, so we're looking forward to the first one that we've had in over a year. We are also wrapping up local assessments there. We will have the state assessment starting, that window opens on October 4th for the MEAs. That's new this year that they're testing twice, not just in the spring. Phys Ed has been going out. Mr. Cohen is going out and using the school trail. He's purchased a lot of compasses through the budget this year, teaching kids different skills with that. They're looking at deer tracks. That's been kind of fun to see. Mr. Jack loves it when we have a parent show up a little early to pick up a kiddo and they're way out on the trail in gym class, but he's getting to see that trail as well. So that's been fun. It's a nice little, a nice little area to have in the backyard at the school. I also want to thank our parents. I could not believe I expected the schools to be semi-empty for the 3 days we didn't have buses, that people wouldn't be able to change their schedules on a whim and get the kiddos there, but we were almost at full capacity. That was so impressive. I enjoyed greeting people in the morning and in the afternoon when they came and picked their kiddos up. So thank you all for all of the hard effort put into that. We didn't miss much of a beat during those 3 days, and the kiddos that couldn't make it in were home participating through the packets that we used. And then I'll just back up Mr. Wilson with the FRAM paperwork. So just, if you're not sure if you filled it out, please call Janice or Kate and double check, and they'll find out how, they'll let you know how to get that information in. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
And that's the free and reduced lunch
Yes, thank you.
paperwork.
Yes.
All right.
Too many acronyms.
Acronyms, right. Any questions? All right. Thank you. We don't have a student rep yet? Okay. I don't believe there are any other reports.
There are not.
Okay. We'll go into old business, 6.1, a CPT update.
All right. So I will handle this today. First of all, I got to share my screen online. Norma Jean, I don't seem to be broadcasting over there.
There you go.
What's that?
One going. Will that screen work for everybody here?
Yeah, can everybody see that?
So we can go just with the one instead of trying to figure it out?
Just 1 second.
There it is.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Norma Jean. All right. So, as you're all aware, and for those of you who don't know, we post these meetings online. You can watch them. They're actually up the same day. But the CPT team did meet on September 17th, with most in attendance. So, first thing we did, we had an agenda, the things we looked at. We took a dashboard review. As you know, on our website, we have a dashboard that lists our number of cases. We also have our vaccination rate for our staff and things like that, so we took a look at that. We reviewed the US CDC guidance versus the main standard operating procedures. We talked about quarantines and universal masking, testing and pool and Binax Now testing. We kind of kicked around the president's plan. We're waiting on more information from that. We talked about updates to our current plan and about vaccination clinics. So, currently, through 15 days of school, we've had 18 positive cases, which has come to 246 individuals, and that's staff and students having to quarantine. I think that's a pretty large number, and it was staggering to me when I saw it, like that. So the question became, what can we do now? And I think we've all said it. Our main goal is to ensure that as many students can attend school for 5 in-person days as much as possible. And really, to do that, we have to take a look at what the exemptions are to quarantining from school. And so the CPT looked at that and is recommending the following adjustments. So first, an update to the plan. So at a bare minimum, an update to the plan to make the red designation a little clearer, but that would be at a minimum. Secondly, was consider universal masking to reduce the quarantines for students in school. Third, consider pool testing to catch the spread earlier and to also mitigate the need for people who participate to quarantine. And then offering vaccine clinics for eligible individuals. So first off, the plan, and when I say at a minimum, one of the things that we need to think about is if we go to universal masking, if that decision is made, the plan becomes particularly null and void. We don't need the plan because universal masking does away with the need to have a status, the red, yellow, and green system. But the recommendation, to move this, to change would be to add a line down at the bottom that says the school administration will determine which cohort, class, grade, or if the entire school needs to quarantine due to the types of cases presenting at the time. We talked about that a lot to make that a little clearer. I think there was a lot of confusion in that, and I apologize for that. But that, like I said, that's at a bare minimum. We then talked about universal masking, and the CPT is recommending that the board go to universal masking. And basically it means so that students don't have to quarantine from school. It's important to note that this is only for students. It does not affect staff. But basically, there's this nice little chart that the Department of Education has put out for us. If we participate in mandatory masking, students can continue to attend school if they are a close contact. And when we think about that, need to be in 5 days in-person instruction and not have our kids constantly out of school. I think that's huge. I mean, that's been our commitment all along to be at 5 days this year. I think it's important to note, and this is not something we made up. This is straight from the Department of Ed, is that if you use the mandatory masking exemption, the students can still come to school, but they cannot participate in community activities. And that's what this chart talks about. So the CPT is recommending universal masking. Next, we talked about pool testing. Pool testing, and the CPT is recommending that we sign up and participate in pool testing. So if we participate in pool testing, the students and staff that do participate do not have to quarantine from school. They also can attend school-based activities so basically that would mean at the high school, middle school, Kerry Ricker, our after-school activities, they could still attend those if they participate in pool testing. And again, it's another way to keep our students in school 5 days a week. I think it's also important to note this is one way for our unvaccinated staff to not have to quarantine from school. So if our unvaccinated staff participate in pool testing, they can still continue to come to work universally masked.
Andy, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So for clarification purposes, if we go the route of having universal masking and we decide to have pool testing, pool testing is done with permission, written permission,
Yes,
correct?
written permission. Yep.
Okay. And if that is the case, if a student is participating in any sort of after-school activities, athletics, clubs, anything of that nature, if they are part of universal masking and pool testing, does that allow them to continue to participate in those activities,
Yes, it does.
even if there's potential exposure?
Even if there's potential exposure. So they may
Okay.
attend school-based activities.
What
Okay.
about, what about outside rec activities?
Outside rec, they cannot. They still are
Right.
community quarantined.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Is that Vicky?
Yeah, we'll probably cover that, hopefully, the pros and cons.
Yep. I'm going to go through that. Yep. So pool testing. How does pool testing work? So self-swab. So the first thing is 5 to 25 students in a pool. They self-swab their nose and drop it into a vial. That vial is then sent off to a lab via FedEx, and the lab runs it. A couple of days later, we get the test results back. If a positive test results in that pool, we then have to Binax Now test every student and person in that pool to identify the person that has positive for COVID-19. Once that happens and we identify that person is then removed from school for their quarantine period. So and then we still have to test another, Kathy, was it 5 days after?
You get a set date every day, every week. So if you're a Tuesday school, you will get tested every Tuesday. So when we sign up, if we sign up for pool testing, the CDC tells us what our day of testing will be.
And then will tell us when we have to follow up with a Binax test.
The follow-up is 48 hours after test results. So you swab on your day, you get results 48 hours, and you would do the Binax the next school day.
So, it is labor intensive. The company that does it does provide some folks to do it, but we would also have to provide some folks to help that. It requires about 3 people per pool to do the pool. So, but again, it allows the opportunity for students to not have to quarantine from school.
Right, and so in order for pool testing to be viable, it requires
30%.
30%
Of the building.
30% of the building with parents'
Permission,
obviously.
Yep, parents and staff. Yep, so 30%. I think that's important to note. That's not 30% of the district, that's 30% of each building. So if you have 100 students and staff in a building, if 30 of them sign up for pool testing, those 30 qualify for the exemption.
Right, so it's only those that are being in the pool that are
Right.
signed up and are being tested that there's no quarantine.
Right.
So if they're not part of the pool,
The exemption
then they're a
doesn't
close
apply.
contact. But if they're universally masked,
They can still come to school.
right, so.
But- So the other thing we talked about was vaccinations. Talking about offering vaccination clinics here. I know I talked to our nurses. Our nurses met today, looking at how we could do that, partnering with Midcoast. They are working on that. I think, we've seen the news lately that 5 to 11 is going to become available. When that happens, we will definitely be offering a clinic for that as well. So, ultimately, the CPT spent a lot of time working through this, and they are recommending, at a minimum, that change to the plan, but more strongly, universal masking and pool testing.
Andy, can we go back to the DOE
Yep.
color code spreadsheet? Yes.
Sure.
So I think that might help answer the question is if there's parents that decide not to participate in the pool, if the board
Can you hear?
supports that.
Can you speak
You
in?
can't hear me, sorry. Okay, so I'm asking for this to be put back on because I think it will help clarify. So there's a line that says pool testing and then there's a line that says universally masked. So if the RSU decides to go pool testing and you decide you don't want your child to do that, if we are also universally masked, in looking at this, and correct me if I'm wrong, it means that close contacts wouldn't have to quarantine, correct?
You are correct.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
That's all I have.
All right.
You got it. Yep. Yep. Unless they're participating in pool testing.
School-sponsored.
School-sponsored sports. Yeah. Oh, no problem.
So, one more question. Do you welcome more than 30%
Absolutely.
per school?
Yep, absolutely. The CDC says to be 100% effective, 75% is the number, but the DOE has, along with the main CDC, has set 30% as the number.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so if we don't get 30%, then the pool testing is invalidated and we're not, that, you know, we got 29% participation. It's like having 0% participation.
Exactly.
So it will take buy-in by the parents in the community to allow their student to be part of the pool and be tested. If we can put everything in the process of getting set up because there is a delay in getting going. And during that time, we can find out and send out the permission slips, try and send out some information on pool testing to help educate the community members that aren't listening tonight a little bit more about pool testing, and even those of us who are here about it. And then we get those back and see if we have the 30%. If we don't have the 30%, then we can pull the plug before we go down the road too far. And if we do, then we know that we'll be able to continue on, and we won't delay for a couple of weeks while we're waiting to see if we have 30% to try and get things going. The sooner we get it in place, the sooner that those in the pool can reap the benefits of the pool testing. So we don't want to delay it.
It is a 3 to 4 week onboarding process, but one of the things that comes with that is priority with Buy Next Now testing. We have been doing some of that in our offices right now for on the spot in our nurses' offices, but they are hard to come by. In the last month, I've ordered 600 tests. I still haven't gotten a shipment yet. We have been very lucky with our partnership with Lisbon. They have loaned us tests on 2 separate occasions now, so hopefully we will see those any day.
Can I ask a couple of questions? So with the pool testing, the ones that get sent out, are those PCR tests?
They are.
Oh, and then the
Yep.
Buy Next Now are rapid tests, so you
Rapids.
get the results very
Yep.
quickly. And then my other question is about staffing.
Yep.
Because I'm hearing how stretched our administration is, how stretched our nurses are. What's the plan for that if we decide to do that?
If we did that, we'd obviously take up the offer from the company that's doing it. I would also bring in some outside folks using our COVID relief funds. Yep.
One second, please. Any other questions from the board?
Andy, on the first slide, you said that there were 18 cases.
Yes.
How many of those kids were hospitalized?
We've actually had 2 students that have been to the hospital since in the 15 days that we've been in school.
How many died?
0 that I know of.
Thank goodness.
Other questions from the board? All right, so it has been the board's policy in the past, and this is an important topic. So what we've done in the past, and I'd like to offer that opportunity again tonight, is that the board has kind of finished its preliminary discussion of this. The next agenda item is going to talk about approval of possible board action. So under this part of this brief of the CPT, instead of under the next one, we consider the board action. I would like to allow an opportunity for people to make brief statements or ask brief questions about these recommendations so that we can have a clear understanding. And so I'll open that up for those who may have a question about this or a brief comment so that the board can hear your comments specifically about this recommendation that the CPT is making to the board. And then after that, the board will come back and have another opportunity to ask any other follow-up or final questions that the board might have. And then we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the possible board action on the CPT recommendations. So this is a discussion about the CPT meeting and its deal. The next item will kind of be much briefer in that if we're going to make a change, the board will have to move to whatever change they want to go and make. We'll have our brief discussion on that, and then we will vote on whether that motion is going to be accepted and policy changed or not. So that's the way the flow will go. It allows for input from the community. Again, please. Brief comments, questions. We'd like the questions. We want people to be clear. That's why we post the meeting. We're not required to. We do that for transparency so that people will know what our process is that we go through. All right? So anybody that has a question, here and Facebook, or Zoom rather, not Facebook, Zoom, please raise your hand, come to the mic so we can hear you, and let us know at this point. So open it up. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a quick question going back to the masking.
Can you use the mic so not only can we hear, but people online can hear as well?
I just want to be very clear that I'm understanding the masking. Obviously, with human error, there's break in protocol, which my son has experienced this past week. There was a break in protocol with the way something was handled, so he in turn is having to quarantine from lack of protocol. With human error, obviously, there can be that break. So my question is, because I was told that, and I want to make sure that we're clear here, that if my son is masked properly 100% of the time, he will not have to quarantine again, regardless of other individuals in the class. Because when addressing Kathy, are you Kathy?
I
Yes.
am.
When addressing Kathy, I got an email saying that if my son was masked 100% of the time correctly, he would not have to experience this again.
So that's correct. For school hours, so 100% masking allows you to come to school. However, the child, if they were deemed a close contact, would not be allowed to attend out of school activities. So co-curricular, extracurricular, rec. You are quarantined, you're allowed to attend just school hours, nothing after the school bell.
Regardless of what his peers are doing.
Correct.
Whether they're masking or
And
not.
that is part of, and I in the CPT talked about what that 12-step process is. We do ask people if they're vaccinated, unvaccinated, and double check masking. So if you are 100% masked, regardless of how the board recommends going forward for universal or not, if you are so choosing that, you fit in that category under number 4.
Thank you.
I think I heard somebody say, is that for school sports too?
So if you are wearing a mask, you can attend school. You cannot attend school sports, rec, or other school activities. You are allowed to attend school hours. Pool testing is the only thing that allows you to attend co-curricular and extracurricular activities based on this chart.
Okay, hold on, please. We can't have back and forth. We got a lady up here that's waiting to go and ask her question. So if you want to speak, please. Otherwise, people out online can't hear the questions.
I
Right?
should
They're not using the mic.
have brought my pen and paper. Just in regards to the testing and the vaccinations, there is that large vaccination clinic in Auburn that anyone that's in the criteria, the age group, could take their 12-year-old and older at any point and get them vaccinated. So I guess I just don't understand the resources. Again, would be kind of a concern that we'd be able to do that appropriately. And the same thing with testing. Anyone that wants to go get a test can go to any Walgreens or urgent care or things like that too. So I guess kind of a resource as well would be a concern to make sure that that was done.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Natasha. I am actually a soccer director and I'm the VP of the board. So my question to you is, how is it that you can tell the kids that are fully masked 100% of the time that they can go to school sports, but they can't do anything outside of rec? How is it that's your choice to tell them what they can and cannot do outside of school? How is that?
It's not my choice, ma'am. I'm just following the main SOP.
It's
So
a
if you-
recommendation.
This portion is the requirement, and it is a requirement that we follow the SOP. It is a recommendation of the board to determine what exemptions that the board and the school department want to follow. Currently, in our current plan, we are only following number 1, 2, and 5. We have not looked at 3 and 4, and that's what the CPT today is looking to see if the board wants to explore exemptions 3 and 4. I'm just following the standard operating procedure.
I'm just asking the question why you would think that it would be okay if they can go to school sports, but then they can't do anything else outside of that.
It's not my personal opinion, I'm just following the SOP.
So they can't go to school sports.
No, they can.
Either.
No, they can go to.
No, they cannot. Pool testing.
In pool
allows
testing,
them to
correct.
participate in
Well, then how come
activities
in the
after
7th and 8th grade football last week, I had a coach ask all the kids to raise their hands, who's vaccinated, and who isn't, and they made all the unvaccinated kids leave. First of all, you can't ask that. It's a rec club. You can't do that. That's a violation of your rights.
So I think there's two different funding streams when you think about this, right? So when you think about school-sponsored activities, it's sponsored by taxpayers and governed by the Department of Education.
This isn't sponsored, but rec is not sponsored by the school.
Right, and I think that's the disconnect, right? So rec right now, you're the VP of rec, Sabatis Rec, and I'm sure you have a board of directors in some sort. So
Yes,
I would assume or maybe suggest that there might need to be some sort of policy or some sort of governing piece that helps make those decisions, because the school doesn't,
Right,
and
they
rec
shouldn't be able to tell the kids if they can play rec sports or not.
But I think when kids are exposed at school, the CDC is saying, if you have it.
Not if they have a mask on, that's my point.
But we're not universally masked currently.
Right, but I'm sure that's probably what the plan will be.
I have someone online.
Yep, Woody Bailey would like to speak. Go ahead, Woody.
No,
Not there?
not there.
No? Oh, there he is. Woody, there?
My apologies, there's a delay. It's hard to hear it on the Zoom. I just wanted clarification on what you showed us with the universal masking versus the pool testing. I understand the difference between the two, but I didn't hear an option to.
You cut out on us.
Sorry. So the question was on number 3. Is there an option just to do pool testing? And as a follow-on to that, is there any consideration to allow children who have tests outside of the school to then return if they have a negative test?
Okay, so I can answer the first part. There is an option. There's nothing that says that we have to do universal testing or pool testing. The board could decide to just do pool testing and only get its benefits without universal masking. There wouldn't be as near as much benefit because it would only affect those in pool testing. If they weren't wearing masks, they'd still be quarantined. All the other students that might have some kind of close contacts. So we could still have some problems there. Now, as far as the second part of the question, which is a little bit outside of my area.
Sure. So, you want me to take this, Kathy? Well, it was about an option to test out of quarantine.
Yeah, so in the SOP, you cannot test out of quarantine. This is one area that actually we follow the U.S., and we kind of talked about this at CPT. So last year we had a DOE framework that we followed and got the 6 requirements. In the SOP, you cannot. That's okay. That was weird. And then we also had how do we have to handle the positive cases. This year, the main CDC, and there was a lot of discrepancies. This year, the department has taken on the US CDC framework and their guidance. However, in quarantine, the US CDC, as even updated on 9/13, still recommends that quarantine is 14 days. However, the main, when we follow the positive cases in quarantine based on our SOP, they suggest 10 days. We are still doing 10 days, but you cannot test out of quarantine.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So if they are mandated to wear masks, and say they do that for sports still, can they do sports with the masks on, or no?
No. So let's take pool testing out. There's two problems with just universal masking. The first one is you can only do school-based, school hours activities if you were deemed a close contact. The other component is that exemption does not qualify for our unvaccinated staff. So universal masking, it affects students only. Unvaccinated staff would still have to do a quarantine.
Okay. And I just want to get this straight because there was questions back there. It's the pool testing that they can do sports if you participate in
Yes.
the pool testing.
Correct.
And we reached the 30% threshold.
And it's not just sports, it's all co or extracurricular activities.
So outside of school.
Yep,
and
dramas, all of those clubs and things outside. Not rec, not community-based. We're not in charge of community-based. We can only say what you're allowed to participate in school and what is a school-affiliated program. So masking, just school, pool testing, you can do both in and out of school-affiliated programs.
All right, any others? So some good questions, and good comments. I appreciate that feedback. I'm sure all the board members do. It helps us in our discussions and deliberations. So at this point, I'll come back to the board. Are there any other questions on kind of this part of it, which was the update of the CPT? All right, so if that's it, then we will move on to 6.2. So this is a possible action, board action on CPT recommendations. So if there's a board member that would like to make a recommendation on changes to the plan, I would ask that they make that motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we go with universal masking and the pool testing, Bob.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Any discussion? All right, so by doing these, then the plan as we have it is obsolete. We won't have to worry about that color code and the pen and ink change to the red, which has been confusing. All right. So one other, would it, well, not part of the motion, so if, my question is when would we want this implemented? I would suggest,
I would suggest as soon as possible.
I would think Monday to allow those who are not in
Right.
favor of sending their children masked to have an opportunity to find an alternative if that's their choice.
Yep.
All right. Hopefully that Thursday and Friday of this week, delaying it those 2 days will not endanger the safety of any staff or student unnecessarily.
So you're saying effective September 27th?
That's what I was just looking at the date.
Yeah, 27.
Okay, so we have a motion to move to universal masking and pool testing. Universal masking would become effective on September 27th. And pool testing, once we can get the required number of participants and it put in place with all the supplies. Understood?
No, I'd like to see if we could stick with the current plan. And as well as add being able to test out of quarantine.
Okay.
To be honest, if it was up to me, we would have no masks because kids don't die from COVID.
Understood.
As a matter of fact, after they've recovered from COVID, they're 14 times more protected than if they're vaccinated.
All right, I hear your thoughts. Are there any other comments on the motion?
I like the current plan also. Robert's rules. I like the current plan also. It gives us an opportunity to not wear masks until there is some cases present, and then it's masks instead of being masked all the time. I feel like this is, I'd hate to say best of both worlds, but it touches base on both.
Okay.
That's my comment on it.
All right, fine, thank you. Any other comments?
I will say that I have had people from the community who have had to, their children have been deemed close contacts. And I have had people from the community who have younger students in the school who have asked for clarification. So I'm grateful, Kathy, for and Andy, for the very clear guidelines in which we all have to be functioning within. As I have said before, this is like trying to nail Jell-O to a tree, and the tree keeps moving, if that's possible. We are committed, and I will say this again from last time, we are committed to have your children in 5 days a week. And if that means that they have to wear a mask, you know, my kid's in college, and I'll be honest, it was a concern of, are you gonna go back to school because you gotta get a shot, or are you gonna opt out of your scholarship? The choice was made, she went back to school, but even at a university level, folks, everybody inside every single building has to wear a mask, regardless of whether or not you have had a shot or not. So the bigger picture here is that we are committed to having your kids in school. We want that. And if it means that they have to wear a mask on their face, as a parent, if I had a kid in this school, I'd say, yep, I don't care. If it means you're gonna be in school, let's do it.
All right. Any other comments?
We have a motion, right? Are we supposed to vote?
There is a motion, it's on the floor. This is comments on the motion. Those who watched the tape of the CPT meeting have heard this. For those who don't, this is, I'm trying to prevent parents out there who don't expect it to not have to suffer what I did a number of years ago. I put my firstborn child to bed perfectly healthy one night. The next morning I found him blue, not breathing, in a pile of bubbles. And we were able to resuscitate him, but he suffered a lot of brain damage for lack of oxygen. I don't want any parent to have to go through that. About 7 years later, he died as my wife was feeding him lunch. He stopped breathing. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if a child is going to. We have to do what we can do to protect the vulnerable children that are in our care. And as a school board member, it has been my goal for the number of years that the Wales residents have given me the honor to go and serve on the school board and try and provide the best education that we can afford to our students. And that means keeping them safe. So I support the universal masking. The pool testing is an additional step to allow the students to be more involved in their activities and in the community. And for those reasons, I would support the pool testing. I'm not sure that it's keeping them that much safer in the school, but it's allowing them more participation, more exposure, and to do things that they want to do. So for those reasons, I support the universal masking, and I hope that nobody ever has to go and go through what I did a number of years ago. This was 1978. So it's been a long time, but I still remember, and I still know his birthday and his date of death, and it stays with you. So for those reasons, I'm going to vote in favor of this motion because I think it will keep our students and staff safer. Not 100% maybe, but safer. Are there any other comments?
Yes, I'd like to say that I understand the fear of the unknown. It's human nature. But the fact is, kids are not perishing from COVID. Maybe with COVID, but these kids have severe underlying conditions. According to the CDC, as of yesterday, the fatality rate of kids is 0.00003%. We're going through all of this for absolutely no reason.
until it's your child.
It's not going
That's
to
the
be my
problem.
child, Bob, because my kids have already had COVID. It took them less than a half a day to recover. Now they're 14 times more protected than if they were vaccinated.
All right, so I don't want to get in an argument. This is discussion on the motion. There's no other discussion on the motion.
I don't, it's just you're using scare tactics, so I figured I would as well.
All right, there's no other discussion on the motion. I will call for a vote. This will be a roll call vote.
You want me to call the roll?
If you call the roll, please.
Vicky?
Yes.
Yes. Christy?
Yes.
Dory is absent. Robbie?
Yes.
Avery is absent. Jen?
Yes.
Joe?
No.
Bob?
Yes.
Scott?
Absolutely no.
Motion does carry.
Okay, the motion carries. So everybody here and out there listening in, pass the word out. We'll get the word out through the means that the school has to put messages out. Masking on Monday, and we'll be looking for your permission to support the pool testing so that we can keep our students in school and active in activities.
Yeah, we'll be sending out, we'll send it, yeah, we'll have to get that, once we get onboarded with pool testing, then the papers will be going home.
Yes, ma'am.
So, in order for my son to be able to participate 100% of school activities, he has to be part of the pool testing.
If in fact he becomes a close contact through the system. If he's part of pool testing and it comes up in the pool, then he will be able, and he would be able to participate in school activities. Right. I mean, if he was identified as the one with COVID.
Right.
Okay, yeah, no, he's not going to participate. Right. Oh, we're talking about close contacts that are involved in pool testing. If they're a close contact and they're not in pool testing, they do not have to quarantine if they don't have, but they cannot participate in school activities.
After school.
That's the real key between pool testing and just universal masking. So if your student doesn't participate in any school activity afterwards, doesn't want to attend any functions, then the pool testing will probably not provide any benefit for them. But if they want to participate in a sport or the robotics club or drama or future farmers or anything that we offer, if they're not in pool testing and someone in that group that they're a close contact with has COVID, then they would not be able to participate in those activities. That's the real deal. We're going to have to get that information out and explain clearly to the community as part of our information on what pool testing is going to do. Yes, Kathy?
I just want to make sure we're clear that if you are not participating in pool testing and you are deemed a close contact, you do have to quarantine.
Even if they're masked, not if they're masked.
If they're masked, I'm just saying, I'm just trying to take each exemption. So if you participate in pool testing only, right, or if you're not wearing a mask, although we decided we're wearing universal masks, so we're okay.
So that's it.
But if it was a school system and you were just pool testing and you were a close contact, you would have to quarantine. But now that we're universally masking, you will just have to do the quarantine outside of school hours and outside of community quarantine.
Which is not a decision, I mean, we don't really have a say in that. That's not our policy, that is the
main
guidance that goes out
SOP.
there.
Yeah, so pool testing allows you to do after-school activities that are school-related. Correct.
Correct.
Correct. Correct. As of Monday, starting Monday.
Yes, ma'am.
But rec follows CDC guidelines. do they? They should be. do
Right, the
they?
guidelines are that they can participate in school or school-based functions if with the pool testing, but they are not allowed to participate. They should quarantine from outside activities, community-based, which would be the rec program. That's not we're not making that policy, that's not us, that's, you know, that is, and we don't police it, we don't have a way to police it. So we can tell the parents that we tell the parents your child is to be quarantined from community-based activities for 14 days or 10 days. And then if they do it, hopefully they would follow that guidance. But if they don't, we're not policing it. We're not going to check that box off. That's, you know, that's not ours. We can't take on that responsibility too. Right. So your organization should set the ground rules on whether or not, if you're notified that, or a parent is notified their student was a close contact, what your actions are going to be, whether you're going to allow them to participate or not. That's your organization's responsibility. And we can't notify the rec by law. We notify the parent, child was a close contact.
So will parents still be notified that there's close contacts even with universal masking? I think that's a question out there. Yes.
Yeah, we're still required to notify everyone that they're a close contact. It is still recommended, if you are deemed a close contact, to be monitoring your symptoms for those 10 days, as well as get tested in the first 3 to 5 days after your last day of exposure. So parents will get all that information, and we do have that information on the website as well, that when we direct people to their close contact, they can follow those guidelines.
Okay. Vicki?
Hi, I work for a school system, and just this week we have universal masking, and we had a specialist who saw 90 students come down with COVID. These 90 students, we notified all parents, told them have your child checked if you feel within 2 to 3 days, and all 90 were still in school.
All right, so we're going to move on. I thank you all for your participation. If you carry the water out in the community, please carry it correctly. You know, this is recorded. They can watch it so they can get the information there. Hopefully, some of the questions and comments that were made out in the audience without the mic will be able to pick up, or they'll be able to interpret based upon the response. So we're going to move on to new business. 7.1, presentation of the RSU4 induction, mentoring, and certification handbooks.
So we do have Jack Carney here. Mr. Carney is an English teacher at the high school, but he is also chair of the support. I know the. Can you give me the acronym, Jack?
Yes. So thank you for the introduction. Can you hear me? Okay.
Might want to get a little bit closer.
Okay.
You can
A little better.
Hold it. Or
Okay.
bend over. You know, get a.
That's it. Okay.
In your back.
So I'm chair of the local credentialing committee. Credentialing refers to certification. Certification is essentially educators' license to teach. And every school district should form a committee like we have to assist educators in making sure that their certification is up to date. Typically, teachers renew their certificates every 5 years. Educators rather renew their certificates every 5 years, and it's just a good idea to keep track of that and assist them in that process. And so the first document, the RSU4 certification handbook, was recently updated. It was over a 2-year process. I guess maybe the best way to think about it or look at it in a sort of a visual way is on page 5. There's a nice flow chart there to take a look at. Just let you take a look at that for a moment. I know there's a lot in here. I don't know if you've had a chance to review it. I know the committee reviewed it 2 weeks ago, but I'm certainly willing to answer questions about it. There's also an induction mentoring handbook, and this would apply to teachers who are new to the RSU, especially teachers with less than 2 years experience. And it really outlines in detail requirements for mentors, requirements for teachers who need mentoring and whatnot. And I'm happy again to answer any question. Again, this handbook was also approved by the committee 2 weeks ago, but I'm certainly willing to answer any questions that any of you might have about either handbook.
I think, oh, sorry, I just want to say, I think it's important to note that, that these are required by law. We are required to have these. We hadn't updated them in a long time, and so that's why they're here for your review. They do require a vote of the board.
Yeah, we've always had these handbooks.
Yeah.
It's an update, yes.
I appreciated, as a new board member, being able to look at these and really be able to follow them and kind of see the benefit for both the mentor and the mentee. I think it's a great investment in staff, and also for those staff that have been with the RSU for an extended period of time. It gives them an awesome opportunity to really help grow our district. So I think you guys did a great job.
And I'm glad you said that, because it really is about, it's not just about supporting, it's also about, it's also good policy for a school district to keep teachers in the district. Absolutely.
So thank you for your work on this.
Any other questions? So I guess the other question, so this is the presentation on it?
Yep.
I guess we do the question once a motion's been made to go on, to approve them. But if there's any other questions on the presentation, I thank you for your work and everybody on the team.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you.
Move on to 7.2, entertain a motion to approve the RSU number 4 induction, mentoring, and certification handbooks.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion. Seeing no discussion, then we'll take a vote. This will be by roll call also, please.
Vicky,
Yes.
Christy,
Yes.
is absent. Robbie,
Yes.
is absent. Jen,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
and Scott.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. 7.3, discussion, the future of the collaborative planning team. So, I can just kick it off real briefly, but there's been some discussion about if there is a need for the collaborative planning team, and if so, its composition. So the collaborative planning team was put together basically as a requirement for the 2021 school year opening. And then that expired because it was guidance just basically for that year. We maintained it because it had provided an opportunity for a group of people that had been involved and were aware of the processes in place to go and look at information and data that has changed over time, and to make a recommendation to the board. Their recommendation is just a recommendation. It's like every other committee we have. The Personnel Committee makes recommendations on policy. The Finance Committee makes recommendations on financial things, facilities, improvements, and et cetera. To come to the board, it's actually, as you see tonight, it was a board discussion. The board makes those approvals. So, and because we tape them and it's open, anybody can see them, the time that's taken by the CPT to go and look at the data, discuss it, in a committee, which means there's no really outside interference going on during that meeting, so it's an open exchange, it can be done, and then people can view it afterwards, and that includes board members that aren't there, and community members, obviously. And then a recommendation comes to the board. And then the board discusses it and decides whether to accept the recommendation, modify the recommendation, or not take it at all. So, because there's been some comments from individuals that the board is, that committee, rather, is no longer necessary, then we thought that the board should kind of reauthorize it. It was the board's decision that we had to have it, and then the board kind of decided we'd just kind of keep it going, and would meet, it would make its recommendations, and it can get together and view the data on a fairly regular basis. So we'd like to kind of throw this out for discussion of the board members on whether or not they believe the CPT should be maintained, and if so, do they believe that there's some changes in either how it's configured or how it operates. So at this time, I'll throw it out for comments.
I think I'll start since I believe it was me that actually initiated this. The difference between CPT and the other committees that we have, such as financial and everything, they're appointed by the superintendent versus being elected. I'm not opposed to continuing with the committee. I think when they're tasked with something, it takes the burden off the board and the administration. We could see that with the COVID plan, and that would have been lengthy for the board to have put together a plan like that. I also think it's highly important to gain insight in the general feel of an item from the community and the parents. What I would like to see is a couple of changes. Firstly, remove any board members from the CPT committee. I believe that's a conflict of interest. It gives essentially that board member the ability to vote on what they're tasked with, and then also, once it's presented to the board, a second vote. I'd also like to see sort of a reduction in the administration. I believe we should maybe add more community members, more specifically parents and guardians, and also teachers. I think the insight from parents and teachers would be very valuable. I also think that we should look at changing out these members. We can't just have them appointed and sitting on the committee indefinitely. We should maybe look at changing them out on an annual or biannual basis. And I think that also that the board should revisit CPT committee every so often, whether that's annual or biannual, just as we're doing now.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments?
I think Scott brings up some really good points. As I review the CPT meetings, albeit on 1.5 speed, so I can get through them in less than the 2 hours that they meet. But I do think that there's some voices that are absolutely missing. I'm not sure if there's family members or parents or guardians or whomever is taking care of kiddos from every town. I think that is very important. As we've kind of experienced in the last 4 weeks as school has started, COVID is a jello, and I think there is opportunity to revisit as things change. As we know, summer looked very different than what September looks like, right? So I think there's a lot of value in this committee, and I think the points that Scott brings up should be considered.
Other comments? Suggestions?
No, I think that the committee is, I think it's an asset that we definitely don't want to lose. But the simple fact is that whether how it's configured or who's on it, I don't really think is that big of an issue. But I think we need to have buy-in with as many people as we can get and as many groups as we can get. So if there's a change in it, I would support that. But I think it's an asset that we need to keep.
Okay. I also commented, I think, in the past that we were a little bit administrative heavy. And I helped make the suggestion that we bring on some community members, which we did in the spring. We added some community members in there that we didn't have initially. We do have 2 teachers. The school nurse is usually there.
Student as well.
And who?
A high school student.
High school student, but they didn't have a high school student, hasn't been.
She wasn't there yet, the last meeting, but she was prior.
So, not everybody attends every time. So it's wait. Now, every committee that we have has a board member on the committee, right? And none of the committee members are elected. They're actually appointed by the chair. We ask you each year, annually, what committees you want to serve on. I think Robbie's been facilities and finance for, except when he was the board chair, most of the time. So, and we have to remember that the board, whoever's on the board at any of these committee meetings isn't speaking on behalf of the board. They're speaking for themselves as a board member, and then they bring the report or the recommendation to the board. So I don't know that it's a plus or minus having a board member on there. I certainly don't have to. I was asked to be on it initially, and I agreed as the board chair. It was being put together, we had to have it. So if what I would recommend, because, is that we send your recommendations in to Andy, or do you want somebody else to be the point?
No, I will take this. I was actually gonna say that, so I think, I would like to, if you would send me your recommendations, and then we can put together a framework to bring back to you of what a revamped collaborative planning team might look like.
I think it might be interesting too to ask the current CPT.
I can't hear you.
To ask current CPT members for feedback on
Yep,
that too, if possible.
absolutely.
Because
Yep.
I think it's important to get the full picture.
My only request for the CPT is that for those of us who don't attend the meeting or aren't able to watch it, that somehow those of us on the board could get minutes of it prior to the meeting of a report out. It would be extremely helpful. I don't always like finding out things on social media that I feel like I should be informed of, so it would be really nice to have that information prior to. Thank you.
Okay, so we haven't really taken minutes, I don't guess. I think we just recorded it and left
Yes.
it out there, because we don't take minutes at most of the committee meetings.
Right.
So I guess if the board, if the CPT is going to make a recommendation, that perhaps that would be communicated.
Yeah, that would be
What
helpful.
the outcome is, and not necessarily minutes,
Correct.
all right, to capture all of it.
The
If
bullet
anybody has any
points.
questions, maybe they go back and scan through to look at that one
Yeah.
particular thing.
Yeah, the
All right.
highlights would
But
be helpful.
Send those recommendations into the superintendent, or your ideas and thoughts about the formation of it. They can kind of put it together and bring it back to the board. The board can look at it and say yay or nay, or tweak it, so that we feel that, just like we do with our other committees, I think we feel pretty well that the recommendations that come from our other committees are well thought out and are usually accepted by the board. Right? So we'd like to have that same sense of belief that the CPT that's going to be out there is going to make the best recommendations they can to provide the safe and educational environment, because that's what it's about. That's their job, the CPT, that they can for the students and staff. And then we'll get it, we'll discuss it. So that would be the next step.
Next agenda.
CPT is not scheduled to meet again currently, so I don't expect it will meet before the next meeting in its current situation, and then we'll be able to determine then, hopefully, what it's gonna be before it does meet again. All right? Thank
Can I
you.
just ask one quick question? How many, could you give us a breakdown as to who is on the committee? Because I've watched all of them, but it was still kind of hard to figure out who was who.
Yeah, you want to, or you want me to?
Yeah, you can probably get a little bit
Yep.
better numbers.
So our 3 building principals, Marco, Ben, and Jamie, special ed director, Nancy Dwyer, Jim Palmer, Norma Jean Audette, Glenn Reynolds, Kathy Martin, Brandy DeShane Rand, I'm sorry, Brandy, Will Fessenden, community member, also, and Sherry Rosignol, who's a community member. We also have Alexis Finn, who's a student, and Jody Gray is a nurse. We have Jeremy Young, who's a teacher, and Heather Libby, who's a teacher,
And I was there.
and Bob.
What was the total? Sorry, I was trying to follow along with that.
I feel like it was like 12? 12.
12, so 3 out of the 12 are community members.
Currently.
In essence, they're there specifically as a community member. I mean, I'm a community member too, but I was there, not representing the board, but myself on there as a board member.
Or the parents and students, right? That's
What?
your problem.
What's that?
Or the parents or teachers who made that comment that you vote on your opinion.
At that CPT, yes. All right, because I'm not representing the board there. Just like everybody that's there, I can't say that the building administrators are voting for half of everybody in their building, nor are our teacher representatives speaking for the association. They're speaking for themselves. So on there, we were all kind of speaking for ourselves and what we believe the information led us to be. All right, that is,
Not accurate. But we can move on. I know based on what I hear, parents and teachers are who are trying to represent them.
your opinion and you're entitled to it. So, are there any other, so now we're gonna move on to the approval of
So,
first read?
Can I back up for a sec?
Yep.
So I will bring back the framework to our next meeting? Is that what we'd like?
Yes.
Yep, okay. I just want to make sure I've got that correct.
All right. 7.4, entertain a motion to approve for first reading the following policy, BED, remote participation in school board meetings. Is that a
Second.
motion? Moved by Vicky?
Yep.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
I have a second. Moved in second. Discussion.
So just so you're all aware, this is a required policy now by law. It was passed in the last session, so it is required.
So, Andy, the question I had is that board members should attend board meetings
Yes.
unless they have these excuses
Yes.
or
Yep.
exemptions.
Yeah,
right?
we still have to meet in
Right.
person, but there are ways through this policy that a board member, if they meet the criteria in this policy, could attend and vote remotely. The other piece of it is when we do that, if we do have somebody come remotely, we do have to take a roll call vote.
Right.
So, yep.
Any other questions? Comments on it? Okay, then, so this is first reading. You'll have an opportunity, if you look over it more and have other questions, to go and address those when we bring it back for the second reading. So if there's no other comments or questions, then all those in favor of the first reading? All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, committee reports, finance and facilities.
Yes, thank you. The Finance and Facilities Committee met today at 5:45, and we went over the financials for 2 months of the budget, which would be up until August 31st, which is 16.66% of the budget. Year to date, we've received $3,377,716, which is 15.74% of the budget. And expenses year to date, we have expended $2,976,173.98, which is 15.22% of the budget. And the audit is just 99% finished, and we'll be meeting with the auditors when they finish that up, and Hank will be coming to give us the presentation. Yep. On the facility side, the update on the softball field, sports fields will be back Monday for the final leveling out of the infield. And then I would imagine not too long after that, Glenn, seeding? Yep. Oh, yeah, down on the middle school, sure, yep. Update on the Oak Hill Middle School generator. The pad for it was poured, and Cody Crane will be setting the transfer switch in the mechanical room on 28th. Update on the architect. They'll be coming in to talk to staff and administrators, and that's still moving forward. And on the miscellaneous side, we have hired, like Glenn said, 3 new bus drivers and filling out more applications. So, that's it.
Thank you. Questions? All right, Personnel and Policy Committee,
None.
not this time.
We'll meet before the next meeting.
Next board meeting.
Yep.
And CAI Technology Committee.
We did not meet.
All right, board member comments. No
I-
board member comments tonight?
I guess I just would like to reiterate the fact that, you know, I hear how angry and frustrated people are on all sides of things, and I literally spend a lot of time processing all of that from every person's perspective to really understand what's going on. And what I keep coming back to is the reality is it's about the kids. The kids need to be in school. And as frustrating as things are, if we think back to last year at this time, you know, again, the framework keeps changing, and we're doing the very best that we can, as much as the administration and the teachers and the kids and the parents are. But to be reminded that, you know, the analogy of nailing Jell-O to the wall, I mean, that's what it feels like a lot of the time for us. We're trying to do the very best in representing and doing what's right for the kids. But there are a lot of things that we don't, as a board and as schools and as administrators, have control over because of other people setting the ground rules and then moving that wall that we're trying to nail the said Jell-O to. So just take every moment and support your kids, because that's what it's really about.
And I think I'd like to echo that our kids are watching, and the way that this rolls out is going to be dependent on how we as adults are acting. Kindness goes a long way, and I think it's really important now more than ever that we model that for our kids, because they are our future.
Any others?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that as far as our administrators and teachers go, that I know everybody's lives are busy, and of course somebody's problem is always the biggest problem in the world. But when you have 300 or 400 students, you can have 300 or 400 problems. And a little patience goes a long ways, and sometimes listening to the problem before talking about the problem is a big help. And I think our administrators and teachers deserve that consideration, most definitely. It's not the job they got into to play referee, but it's the job that they have to do. So a little patience goes a long ways.
All right, thank you. There's none others. I'd just like to remind everybody that our administrators, including the superintendent, don't make the policies. We hire them, we charge them to carry them out. So if you call the building principals or the superintendents and it's about a policy, don't yell at them or believe that they're the one who made the policy and it's their fault that it's happening. Policies are done by law by the board. So the board is required to establish policies. That's what we do. And so it's the board's policy. The superintendent and others are hired to carry out those policies, including the education of our children. So little patience with them. They're hearing not only from you, but maybe 1,100 other people the same day if everybody is having a bad day. So as Robbie said, patience. We'll get back to you. I'm sure they hear you. There's a lot of things going on, and they're doing their best. So with that being said, there's no executive session. And if there's no objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned.
Thank you all. 8:26.
All right, thank you all. Thank you all, both on Zoom, online, on our YouTube, and in print.